Hello and welcome to From the Rookery End, another podcast after another Watford win. And fantastic it feels. And in fact, I think before the game I was feeling really positive because, you know, we spoke about it on the mini podcast we did in the week, but, you know, that comeback win against Norwich was fantastic and it gave me a good feeling that this weekend... as I said to David, you know, we didn't, and I don't think we were again, have us roll over and have our tummies tickled. But I wasn't there. Colin was, and we're going to chat to him in a second about what he saw, because he did see early goal from Kayembe, and, well, a monstrous kick and amazing goal from one Wesley Hoedt. And we'll talk about that, of course, in a second. Second part of the podcast is going to be me chatting with Colin Payne, as well as Geoff, Wicken, who have put together an amazing book. Mainly the hard work of Colin and hours, but we'll explain why the hours came into this. Part of the Watford Treasury, this book is basically what you are going to want. One of the things as a Watford fan you're going to want this Christmas: golden shots and visions of blue. But let's start by catch up with the old Brigadier, Colin Mace, and find out what he thought and how he reacted when that goal from Wesley Hoedt hit the back of the net. Colin, it flies in. I've heard people call it a lob. I don't think you can call it a lob, not from that far out. It was a heck of a goal, and if we go on last year, it'll be goal of the season. How was it for you in the crowd at Hull when Wesley Hoedt whacked it in the flung it in the... I don't know what he did, whatever you want to call it. He scored a goal.
Oh, John, it was surreal. It was completely surreal. That was how I felt. The first, so you go through a series of emotions, you know, as this thing happens. Firstly, we've obviously gone ahead and then they've clawed it back straight away. So the game is now ebb and flow, but they're getting the better of it. They're starting to press us, put us under some pressure. Anyway, they lose the ball just inside their half. Hoedt looks up and he hits it with his left foot. And my first instinct is, why has he done that? Why has he done that? Then I immediately looked to see where the keeper was, and I could see the man in bright pink backtracking like a fool. And then it hung in the air for so long, and then because we're at the other end, obviously. Then the keeper he looks like he's I've got this, I've got it, I was totally under control, I've got it, and then it goes in. And he's like, I haven't got it. And his reaction, the goalkeeper's reaction, is so funny. I don't know what he's furious, but who's he furious with? He's only got himself to blame. But it wasn't a lob, because it's too far out for a lob. Absolutely. It's a driven shot that goes up first. In fact, it went up quite high, which is maybe why the keeper thought it was going to go over the bar and kind of trapped back, but he never got back anywhere near back far enough to save it, and it crept in under the bar. It's absolutely beautiful. I've never seen a goal like that live, not from that distance, about 50 yards. I've never seen it. It was absolutely incredible. Scenes amongst the Watford faithful, about 800, and that's really when Val, I thought, came into his own. But we'll talk about that a bit later, after the goal was scored.
Yeah, I want to go... Actually, you know, we've seen a lot of games. We talked about Leicester last week. We saw us win a comeback win at home to Norwich. And this game, an away win out of a high-flying, doing well Hull City. So I want to figure out who has had the best week. Let's start with Hoedt, actually, because, you know, he's had the captain's armband for the last two games. And he's really solidified himself, not only for that role, I suppose, that sort of, he didn't sort of feel like he had to do anything or to put himself in a bad position that Barkman did, but he is really just growing into that senior role in that defence, isn't he?
Oh, he totally is. And I think he's clearly a leader on the pitch. I think originally I thought, I think I would have picked Jake Livermore because... I guess partly because he's English, and that's just about we're an English football club and having an English captain speaks to everyone. But actually, Jake Livermore is only just getting fit enough to sort of play 90 minutes game after game. And we'll talk about that as well, maybe, in terms of he's slightly faded, I thought, in the game because he played 3 games in a week, which is he's not been used to. And he played 85 minutes or something against Norwich on the Tuesday. So who had come in, taken the armband. I think it's a good choice. He's a hard man, you know. He's a hard tackling centre half, But when it comes to talking to the referee, when things go against us, he keeps his calm. He walks up to the referee. They have a chat. He had quite a few chats with him on Saturday. And he doesn't wind the ref up, and he's not going to get booked for dissent. Also, he's available to go to the ref because he's an outfield player. So that sort of makes sense. But I think, you know how sometimes, John, you give someone extra responsibility and it makes them worse. Like their actual sport that they play, like making an England captain, a cricket captain, and then suddenly his averages drop. But then other people, when they get given that added responsibility, just go up a level. And I think that's what's happened with Wesley Hoedt.
Yeah, I think it is. And I suspect if they're looking at the game like us and making all the assumptions that you made, he was probably thinking, Jake will get it. Oh, I've got it. Right, that's important for me. But he, like you said, he has had a good week, 2 solid performances, and a wonder goal, really. Let's go behind him a second, I suppose, because Ben Hamer, we saw the goals he let in on Monday. First one didn't. Tuesday. First goal didn't really feel like his fault necessarily, but the back four weren't there. And the second goal was a great shot. He should have really got something to it because it was straight down his throat. But then yesterday, do you think he proved that actually to be a better footballer, you need to play games of football? Because he saved a great penalty, and it wasn't a miss. It was not a miss. He saved the penalty. He's had a good week as well. He's
had a very good week, and I think what's interesting is that with Bachmann losing the plot again and getting 2 yellow cards and being sent off, there's a bit of a question mark about his mentality or his character. Not his character, because Bachmann is a fine goalkeeper, I think, especially for the Championship, but just his personality. How suited is he, certainly, to being captain, which I think, in hindsight was probably a mistake. As in life generally, John, if you're given an opportunity and if you take it, then you might get to keep that opportunity. And I think after Saturday, and knowing Valerian, I've got a feeling he'll keep his place for the game on Saturday, and then you go on from there. The Hwang goal was tough on him. It did move an awful lot in the air, and he did hit it incredibly hard, and it did dip. But he was 3 or 4 yards off his line, and it got over him and then in the goal. If he'd been 2 yards further back, he would have probably saved it. But these things happen, and as you say, he's come into a game which he probably wasn't expecting to play in, and then this has happened. So he probably felt very distraught and thinking, I'm blowing my opportunity to get this number 1 shirt. But he gets a second chance, obviously because of the sending off, or in fact, he doesn't get a second chance because of that. Val just says, no, it's all right, you can stay in goal. Yeah. Partly probably to send a message to Bachmann, but then what happens? He has a good game. He makes 2 or 3 very good saves, and he saves a penalty. And it wasn't the greatest penalty ever hit, but it was into the corner, and he got down, got his right hand to it. Yeah, and he not only did that, he pushed it out for a corner instead of pushing it back into a danger area. So he had a good game, and he and the crowd started singing his name, which I think is a big boost for a player who's just come into the side. Just to hear 800 people singing your name must give you a lot of confidence. So he's had a good week. He'll be happy. He'll be sitting there with his fish and chips tonight, thinking, I wonder if I'm going to play Saturday. I'm just going to say nothing. I'm going to say nothing, and then on Friday when he puts it up, I'm just going to think, he's kept me in the team. That's what he'd be hoping for. Yeah,
I don't think maybe not quite as good a week as Wesley, but I definitely had an improving week, I think, for Ben in goal. The other 2, like the other back 3, they've had solid games. They've not really shined though. Lewis, Andrews, and Porteous doing their thing and being absolutely solid members. I'm not
sure about that actually, John, because I think Lewis has had a hell of a good week. And as I'll explain, in a sense, I'll explain why that is. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Valerian, because I think he's probably had the best week, if you want to put it that way. Yeah. Although he's not a player, but he's had a very good week. He's made lots of very, very good decisions, including keeping Ben Hamer in goal, I would say. But and the substitutions against Hull were really good, and they were timely, and they were well thought through, and they really did affect the last section of the game when we were 2-1 up, and they were sort of running around like headless chickens, getting very frustrated. We need to keep our heads. Went to a back 5, pushed Porteous out wide, brought on Siralta and Pollock, and that really helped solidify things. But what's interesting is that I went to Swansea, we're incredibly cautious, like hold the line, keep it to 0-0. Then went to Leicester. Again, obviously Leicester, the best side we've faced so far. Just banks of 4, keep it tight, don't let them get through the lines, don't let them play in between the lines, and just be very disciplined. And as I was coming up on the train with Oliver Wicken and his son, I was sitting next to a Hull fan, and he said, well, we're a counter-attacking side. He said, what are you like? And I said, well, we normally sit deep in the first half and try to hold it to 0-0, at least 0-0, till half time. And he was like, oh, well, that's not good for us because we like to hit on the counter. So I was thinking, well, we're looking forward to a pretty boring first half. But what's interesting is that having done away performances, Huddersfield the same, very conservative, very cautious, not pressing high, letting them have the ball in their own half, letting them walk it up to the halfway line, then maybe putting a bit of pressure on it. He just flips it. So the Hull manager, Rosinha, must have looked at the last 3 Watford away games and said, well, I can see what they're going to do. But did we? No. And what happens? We pressed the living daylights out of them. Rajovic running towards the goalkeeper, very nearly got the ball off him on one occasion. The fullbacks coming forward to try to overload their fullbacks, and we were press, and it was good because we scored a goal from it, and it was bad because they hit us on the break and scored a goal. So it was a bit 50-50. But what really impressed me was that he was able to flip the tactic. In his mind, he's like, in this game, we're going to do this. And he's got enough trust in those players, and the players have got enough trust in him to execute the plan. And if we hadn't conceded that goal straight after we scored, it would have been a perfect plan. Anyway, he's then able to readjust. And in a sense, it's a bit of a lucky goal, the Hoedt goal, isn't it, to get us back in front, because we weren't looking very likely. But, once that had happened, once that bit of luck had come our way, if you like, he was then able to make the adjustments and see it out. So I see, again, in the Norwich game, I don't know how much of an effect Val had in game, because we were so terrible in those 20 minutes. And then suddenly we were like, we just transformed into a football team. So, but I think he's had a good week. And I think what's really impressive is that he now feels he can change tactics when he needs to. He's communicated that with the players. The players are with him. He's with the players, and it all feels very cohesive. And, it's a really good win. 1-1 would have been fine.
I absolutely think this week is a good week for him. And I think proving to himself probably that all the work that they've been doing, and they haven't just been just doing the one thing, the cautious thing, or they haven't been limiting themselves. And all of a sudden he's had a week where he can, or had to maybe, sort of try them out. The Norwich game, it really felt like the baseline and what they believe that they are as a football club, they stuck to it and it paid off. And then the fact that we are also seeing adjustments, I suppose, it's not necessarily just this week for him. It's actually been several months of developing things that are now have paid off for success. But Lewis, go on, because well, it's
not just as Andrews as well, but Lewis was really caught the eye on Saturday, because if you're going to press, obviously you've got to have more people up the pitch to help with the press. Otherwise, you've got the front 3 are trying to press, and then everyone else behind has dropped off, and then they can get the ball into that, into those areas, and so the press doesn't work. But in order for it to work, you've got to have those fullbacks coming up. You've got to have the midfield coming up just to put more pressure on the ball. And Lewis did something which I haven't seen him do before, which is that he linked very well with Ken Sema on that left-hand side. And he was doing something that I suppose you have to call an underlap. So instead of going on the outside of Sema when he's got the ball, he comes herring up the pitch and he goes inside him, and then Sema was able to get the ball to him. Actually, for the goal, he overlapped and got the ball and pulled it back, and Kiembe was able to get it out from under his feet and hit it really hard, and it went between 2 defenders. Missed another defender and went under the goalkeeper. It was like a sort of bit of magic, but it was all about Lewis, all about overloading. They were trying to hold the line against Sema. Sema was brilliant, of course, as always, because he's so strong and you just can't get the ball off him. But to have your fullback come herring past you and you can just dink the ball through, and then he can just pull it back, and he did that time and time and time again. In fact, in the second half when we were 2-1 up, I was sort of screaming at him to stay back, because as soon as we got the ball, he was just on his bike, and you're like, no, we're 2-1 up, Jamel, come back, because if they get it, there's going to be a huge gap there. And Andrews, I thought was, he was doing some good stuff as well. So it's just interesting how he's taking the handbrake off, inch by inch, and letting those fullbacks get up because he can trust Livermore. Livermore's fit enough. He's got Kiembe and Kone, who are a couple of, they've got good engines and they really like to run around. And I thought Kiembe, again, really put in a brilliant performance. But yes,
they have
a lot of good performances.
Yeah, but those midfield, they have had a good week, I think. And
they really have, as a unit.
Yeah, and that's the most important part. Each one of them you can look at individually and say why they have a strength. I mean, Kone, when he scored that goal on Tuesday, perfectly in the corner, the swagger levels went through the roof with him.
Yeah.
And Kiembe, as we've sort of grown to see him, to love him for, I suppose, in this season, is that hard-working and then that sort of metronome almost, I suppose, that sort of Livermore playing those roles for the team, and another captain on the pitch, and it's fantastic to sort of see. But did you think Kone had, because he has been a bit not hit and miss, but up and down when it comes to performances this season? He had a tremendous one. He did get the tackle in that started the move for the first Watford goal. It wasn't the cleanest of tackles, but he got it in there. Did you think he had another strong game? Because that's really what we need for him. We need consistency.
Yeah, he's certainly completely wholehearted. He does a lot of running, and he can be very good on the ball. His work off the ball, I think, is exemplary. On the ball, sometimes he's a bit... he makes decisions maybe a bit too quickly. But I think there's a real player there. And I don't know how old he is, but he's quite young, isn't he, as far as I know? So, I mean, he's in his sort of early to mid-20s. So he's and the Championship is helter-skelter. It's a mad old league, and the games come thick and fast. So I think he's got to get used to that. He certainly seems very confident. I think that goal did masses for him. And as a unit, they seem to be working quite well. It fell apart a bit for the Hull goal because he literally just strolled right through the middle of the park. But on the whole, they create stuff going forward. They're all three good off when we haven't got the ball. They work together very well. And when we get the ball, Kiembe is the one who really likes to get into the box. It's why he was on the edge of the box to score his goal, because he's the one who likes to get further forward. And occupy that position behind the striker. And again, I suspect that's been coached. He's playing in a sort of number 8 role alongside Kone, who's also a kind of number 8. But when the time comes, Kiembe will move up into that 10 position and get involved. And he's been involved in some goal moments throughout the season, and he was very unlucky not to score at Swansea. But yeah, so I think when you look at midfields, you have to look at whether they complement one another. How do they work together? Are they all, when you look at Rice and Bellingham playing for England, you can see how well they're going to operate together. One does this job, the other one does that job, but they can also do each other's job. They'll all come back if they need to, if we're under pressure. And it's getting a bit like that with those three. Personally, I think they're undroppable. I think that unit, a midfield unit like that, starts to become almost telepathic. They're really looking to help each other out, to cover each other. I think Livermore is vocal on the pitch. And, we've had a lot of midfielders, John, over the last few years. We've had Chalobah and Hughes. We've had Kutsko and Sissoko. We've had the chap from Leicester. Can't remember his name now. The one with the mad hair, Chowdhury. Yeah, none of them really that kind of didn't really organise midfield. They were all good players in their way. Didn't seem to be very vocal. But now Livermore is pointing, shouting, cover him, do this. He's got his eyes on because the ball's almost always in front of him. Whereas Kiembe and Kone are dancing around in that slightly further advanced position. And I think that's something that's none of them are world beaters. But together they can create a midfield unit that is going to be very hard to break down.
Yeah, and I think like you say, we haven't had that sort of instructor in the middle of the pitch, which Livermore's doing to help bring them, to make them better than the sum of their parts. And there was a point when we had Capoue and Doucouré where they were just great, and we didn't have a midfield general at that point, but we didn't really need one because the quality of the players. And the last few years we haven't had the quality of the players, and nobody has been, giving them the instructions and keeping them together. And like you say, I love this combination. Do you think one of them has had a better week than the others?
I think Livermore's probably had the best week, because he played almost the whole game against Norwich after having played 65 minutes against Leicester in a very tough game where they really had to concentrate. And then against Hull, he really had to dig he had to dig pretty damn deep, and he played the full 95 minutes. But there were moments in the game where you thought he's looking quite exhausted. But he found a second win, dug deep. So for me, I just think his return to full fitness. And I don't know. There was an interview in the Watford Observer where I think he said, he felt like maybe his career was coming to an end, and Watford came in for him. He was a bit like, I'm not sure, maybe it's time to hang up the boots. And then he's come back and he said, no, I feel like the years are falling away. I feel like I'm getting fit, I'm playing well, I'm enjoying the players around me, and that's very positive, because we definitely need him, and we need him to be fit enough to play the whole game, because the only other person who can really drop into that role is Kayembe. But we kind of need Kayembe further up the pitch, so it's hard to split them. I would say probably Livermore's had the best week, but Kone's definitely improved his performances as well, and Kayembe is just like a machine. He's a machine.
He is. I think Kone's had an important week with 2 great performances and his first goal. I think Kayembe has had a satisfactory week. The fact that all the work and all the stuff he's done, that goal he scored on Saturday, just stop. It's the cherry on the top of his cake of everything he's done. Up front, though, Rivich scored. Did what his limitations are. Sema did his thing. But they had good weeks. Do they have great weeks? Did Asprilla have a great week? Well, of course he did. I mean, that goal. It's not from the halfway line, but to have the cojones to do what he did and to drag that ball across the goalkeeper for our third goal against Norwich, just shows. I just love that. So I love that confidence he must have in his ability to do that and to think like that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, John. Yeah. That's the point. It's not like it was amazing that he did it. It was amazing that he did it, and I've watched that goal more times than any other goal in the last year. I must have watched it 25 times because I was trying to work out what he actually does. But it's to think of it, and in that split second when he goes from standing still into a sprint to get there before the keeper, and in that moment, as he's running towards the keeper, either subconsciously or consciously, he makes up his mind that he is going to drag the ball across his top of his foot across the top of the ball and take the keeper out and stick it in. And that's what's so impressive about him, is the quickness of thought. But the execution, I was worried they weren't going to give it. I don't know whether they checked with the telly. It was very interesting. There was a slight hiatus after that goal, wasn't there?
He gave the goal, but I think what the confusion was the fact that, no one was doing the VAR screen, gestures, but the fact that he blew it and then he was pointing. I think he was pointing at his watch to say, no, the goal line technology.
Oh, they got that. Right. So I wasn't clear that they've got that in the Championship, but they must have.
I don't know if it's every stadium. I know that we had it at some point. I'm not quite sure. But I saw him point to watch, and that's what I assumed it was, unless he was saying, come on, lads, get on with it. But it's
could have been.
Yeah, but he definitely had a good week. Same with Kone. Every goal he scores grows him in confidence. But Rivich is doing his thing. Did he have many chances yesterday?
No, not really. But he did do the pressing, and he did do the running, and he did hold the ball up better. There were moments, I think what they've learned is that instead of just whacking it at him and him having to try and control it on his chest or with his head, they're actually playing it into his feet in tight situations. He can actually, on occasion, not always, on occasion, he can in fact hold the ball up and bring other players into the game. And he did that on 2 or 3 occasions in the first half, and he pressed the goalkeeper. And, what can you ask from a player? He's limited in his ability. We all know that, and I'm sure he knows it too. But what he does is he gives everything that he can in terms of effort, in terms of his concentration, in terms of trying to get into space and be available, up front, and tries to hold the ball up under pressure from 1-2 defenders. So there's nothing negative to say about him. He's limited, but he is everything else that you would want is there. And then when Bayo comes on, when the defenders are tiring, he just brings a lot of energy, and he's got pace, and so he can definitely cause trouble up there. But I think it's probably the right way round at the moment. Rivich to start, and then Bayo coming on towards the end. I have to say, John, that game on Saturday was an incredibly enjoyable, fun football match to watch. And I know we haven't always been able to say that about our club or the teams that they've played against. But this game, and it's credit to Hull, obviously, they were at home, they want to win and so on, they're on a run. But it's also credit to us, and made for a very, very good game of football. Lots of action, lots of tackling, no time wasting, no simulation, a good performance from the officials, and it was just great fun to watch. I just want to say to people listening, if you're not going to away games, or you can't get to them, or if you can only get to one, pick your away game and go, because this football team of ours that we love so much, so deeply, and for so long, is really starting to be worth watching. They're fun, they play hard, there's some skill levels, some talent, there's a lot of hard work. And I just think, let's go and support them. There was 800 of us, I think, there on Saturday. We made a lot of noise at times. And it was just exciting for everyone. In a cold winter Saturday, travelling across the country, watching the team come out in their turquoise shirts. Is it turquoise? I don't know. What is it? Baby blue? I don't know. Anyway, it was a terrific day out with friends and with football and food and beer and all of that. But the football this time really delivered, and it was excellent.
We're the ORNS, you're the ORNS. Come on, you ORNS!
Thank you very much to Colin there. And, thank you very much to Watford for what was a fantastic week, especially that Tuesday game. And, of course, any away win is awesome. If you were travelling, you might have already listened to it, but there is a new episode of Hornet Heaven out. Make sure you find it wherever you get your normal podcasts. Just search for Hornet Heaven. And in this week's edition, I think there's a couple more to go before Christmas on a Friday. This is called The Truth, and it establishes exactly what happened during a legendary comedy moment from Watford history that a few people seem to remember accurately. Albert McLennan's throw-in in 1978.
I can't wait to see Albert's throw-in again, Bill. It's the stuff of Watford legend. But I can't remember exactly what happened, even though I was there. Some people say he leaned so far back that he fell on his arse, and other people say he never let go of the ball as he went to throw it and fell flat on his face. Andy Knutsford and Bill Mayne would go through the ancient turnstiles and arrive at the Southport game. They go and stand on the terrace in front of the old Schrodel stand. Wow, Vicarage Road as it was in 1978. And there he is, Albert McLennigan. Yes, the lesser spotted Irishman. His first team career lasted 2 Saturdays. He definitely looks the part for a legendary comedy moment. Check out those pasty white thighs and that mop of curly black hair. He looks like an Irish Marx brother. Eventually the ball goes out of play and Bill says, "Right, here we are. This is the famous throw." Brilliant. I can't wait to see what actually happened. Does he end up on his face or his arse? Andy watches and discovers the truth. Oh dear.
It is a lovely episode. It has that sort of that classic thing that I love about Hornet Heaven. Makes me laugh, very funny, but also some warm and some very emotional moments as well. And you'll be able to find out exactly what happened to Albert and his throw-in by listening to the new episode of Hornet Heaven in your usual podcast places. So, what are you getting your fellow Watford fans for Christmas? What are you going to tell your mum that you want for Christmas this year? Well, there is a new book out called Golden Shots and Visions of Blue, written by Colin Payne, part of the Watford Treasury publishing group, I like to call them. It's Watford Treasury's photo book featuring colourised photographs from the Watford Observer, and it really focuses on the 1950s and the 1960s, an era that we know so much about everything since 77 and all the great things that happened under Graham Taylor and Elton John. But this is an era that we don't know the average fan, let's say, doesn't know a lot about. I know a lot of people who know, a fair few people who know quite a lot about it. And those two people are Colin Payne and Geoff Wicken, who I had a chat to the other day. I started off, as this is part of the Watford Treasury publication, I want to ask Geoff where exactly the Treasury came from.
It really began from a Facebook group that Colin set up. The group continues. Its name now is Hornet History and Old Stuff. And it rapidly became apparent that there was a small number of quite avid users who had quite a strong interest in the visual aspects of the club's history. And with Colin's instigation, and he was the launch editor of the Treasury, it turned into a magazine, and that was, I think, the first issue we published was in the summer of 2018. So we've been going 5 years as the Treasury and have produced 10 issues during that period.
And how's that gone? What have you how do you think it's evolved over that time?
I think it's got better and better. I would say that. We've had terrific access to photographs, and that's a big thing. We do bill it as a visual history of a football club, and we've had the great privilege of being able to access all the Watford Observer glass plates that are held in Watford Museum, and Alan Cozzi, who's the club's official photographer, has been very supportive and helpful in allowing us to use some of his images. Altogether, that's with a lot of, I think, quite good quality writing, but again, I would say that, wouldn't I, because I think our contributors are excellent. We've managed to sustain a magazine that we're really proud of. And yeah, there's a body of work that's 10 issues now.
Yeah, and I always say when I talk about the Treasury, I talk about it. It isn't necessarily. It is a magazine, but it's more than a magazine, and it is something that you can just. I always love the ones that come out in the summer, so I can take it on holiday and read it by the beach or by the swimming pool. But from that, Colin, as Geoff said, you were the sort of the launch editor in the first few editions, but you sort of then took it on again, sort of harnessing all this enthusiasm for the love of Watford, the love of the history of Watford, beyond, way back, beyond the let's call it the modern history when GT turned up, and started YBR.
YBR sort of was almost a byproduct of the lockdown, the COVID curse that was all upon us. We got to a point we had, I think it was issue 6 of the Treasury, was all lined up, all ready to come out. And then suddenly everyone was told we had to stay indoors, we couldn't go out, and football was suspended. We thought, oh God, we can't bring this out. And it was a case, as time went on, we sat on this, and the months were ticking on and we couldn't do anything. We thought it'd be good to do something, just something well, initially it was online, like an online fanzine. So we bought out Home Tide, which was like I say, initially it was just online, and then we thought, well, we'd bring out hard copies because, to be honest, that's what I like doing. I like to see stuff printed. I like the thrill of it being delivered and sort of distributing it. So we bought out Home Tide, which we did 9 issues of, and then that mutated into YBR once the lockdown restrictions eased, and that was a stupid name for a football fanzine. So we become Yellow, Black and Red.
And how's that gone? But the last edition is going to be coming out, is it, in December? Or the last for now, at least? Yeah,
it will be. It's gone really well. To be honest, it's great. I love YBR. I love the Treasury too. But YBR, for me, is that there's that air of sort of, we can write something one week and within a fortnight it's out and it's printed and people can be reading it. And there's something more instant about it. And I must admit, I've got a history in fanzines, and it's sort of, it's what I've done in the past. And I just think it's been a cracking fanzine. It's been more than that, I think. It's the quality of writing is really good. The contributors we've got are amazing. And it's something I've enjoyed doing with Nick Catley immensely. Nick co-edits it with me. And I don't think I could have done it on my own without Nick's contribution, but it's something we've both enjoyed immensely.
And we've enjoyed reading it as well, as we do all the stuff that comes out. And Geoff, we've got a new book coming out from I don't know what you call yourself, the Treasury Publishing House, or how you sort of view things. But the new book, tell us about the new book.
Well, it's called Golden Shots and Visions of Blue. And it's basically Colin's work. He, having discovered and then digitised all these photographic plates held in Watford Museum that were originally the Watford Observer photography library from the 50s and early 60s. He got quite good at digitising them. I mean, he'll talk about that far better than I will. But, we ended up thinking, you know what, why don't we branch out a little bit and explore book publishing? For those who've not seen it, it's rather lovely. It's a A5 publication. Each double-page spread shows the original black and white photograph as it was taken by the photographer at the time. And on the opposite page is the colorized version of that same photograph, so that those who prefer looking at the black and white one or think that that's the original art form, and some people do hold that view, are able to enjoy those, as well as explore events that are portrayed really would have looked like to those who were there in colour, which the original photographs are not, because the technology didn't allow for it at the time.
No, not just colour, but what you've done, Colin, to it. The fact that this era, I love the fact that those two things are next to each other, like you say, Geoff. The fact that you can see the original, but then you can almost see it come to life. I don't know, that it might sound a bit weird, Colin, but it does really feel like these things come to life. How long do you spend making? There's several pictures in there. Whenever it gets copied, they'll have a look. But the pictures in there, there's pictures of players outside the ground, outside of the match, in the match, the whole stadium in a couple of pictures. How long does if I had a picture of, there's a couple of pictures of the players in the changing room. How long does that take you to colorise them?
The ones of multiple people in the changing room, probably about 4 hours to do that. As I went on, I got quicker at it, but the fiddly bit, it's almost like when you're a kid, you're colouring in, you mustn't go over the lines. It's a similar thing with this. You got the image in Photoshop, and you have to literally get your mouse and the cursor and draw around the area you want to colour. So each different little piece of colour is a little different piece of sort of cutting out and outlining. So it can be very time consuming, particularly when there's crowds in the background. And I've made a joke about this before, but it's so true. I avoided the big games because I just didn't want to colour in like thousands of people in the background. An individual player, you could probably do in an hour. You could turn a black and white photo into colour. But the more things are in it, the more work's involved, and it does drag on a bit. Yeah.
So to do this book, then, how long do you reckon it's taken you to do all the pictures that are in it?
Too bloody long, John.
Would I get the same answer from your wife, or do you get a different kind of answer from her?
Yeah, you probably would.
Would she say not long enough because he's coming out of his bedroom now to and not doing his work on there?
It's one of them things. Probably, I would imagine you're looking at sort of hundreds and hundreds of hours. In the book, there's close to 90 photos. In fact, I think there is 90 photos. So if you take each one of them being maybe 3-4 hours on average, you can see it's a lot of time's gone into it. And even before that, we had to digitise the photos. So initially, it was a bit like Howard Carter in Tutankhamun's tomb. We're going through the dusty archives of Watford Museum, just box after box of these glass plate negatives, and trying to find football pictures. There was hours of work there as well.
What do you have to do for that? You get a plate. What do you have to do then?
Once you've identified the plate, which is really as simple as holding it up to light and seeing what's on it and seeing if it looks like football, it's a case of we took them away, and we meant the Treasury as a project. We purchased a negative scanner, so it's a scanner for developing film and negatives. So we'd put it on there, scan it, and then see what the actual picture is, and a lot of the time you'd find out it was just a local football match, or it was a Scout Sports Day, or some school, some jamboree or something. Because the Observer, they sent photographers out for everything back in them days. So it wasn't always what we was hoping. But once they come through, you'd scan them and then just basically turn them into a digital image.
And Geoff, at the museum, you know, that how much this does sound like something that's sort of quite important. My mum's got a couple of photo albums and of her family, and we're talking ways of just sort of digitalising it away. And some ones we're going to do a lot of work with, and other ones we're not going to do a lot of work with. You know, how useful is this at this modern, you know, this point in the modern world to the museum and to sort of keeping all these things? How important is it, do you think?
When you think about it, it's actually, I think, the history of the town, or the visual history of the whole town. Because the Watford Observer, once it brought its own photographers on board, and that was around 1950. Previously to that, they'd used a local photography firm called Greville's. But early 50s, it brought its own photographers in-house, and they were, as Colin says, going and covering every event. What's more, they were taking lots and lots and lots of pictures of these events. Hardly any of them actually got published in the paper. So typically for each of the matches that they would cover, the photographer would pitch up and sit behind the goal. He'd have perhaps half a dozen plates and would take 6 pictures during the game, hoping to catch Watford scoring a goal. This was rather easier when there was a penalty and he could go around behind the goal than at any other time. And the following Friday, one of those pictures might be used in the paper, usually heavily cropped. So it would just show man scoring goal, man kicking ball. And the beauty of looking at the wider negatives is you get all the wonderful detail in the background. You know, even the picture on the front of the book shows Dennis Uphill in a pre-season public practice match. You can see the rookery under construction. If you go back to the Watford Observer for that particular week, all it shows is a cropped picture of Dennis Uphill. So you get so much more. It's all the interesting stuff is really what's in the background to me. But to come back to where I started with that, it's the history of the town. And the Watford Observer didn't have room to store them. These glass plates, each one of them is a bit like a drinks coaster, and there are thousands of them. From 1962, the photographers were using 35mm cameras, and all the negatives from that point on are on just sort of normal photographic negatives, so they've still got those in their offices. So there is a run of photographs from 1950 onwards, but they didn't have the room to store the glass plate ones, so they've ended up at the museum.
Yeah, what is it like for you to just, you know, work your way through all those in terms of what does it feel like for you to be sat looking through this as you say, the history of the town?
It's hard to handle. I mean, the ones in the museum Colin has described, we had to hold those up to the light. And that's because the logbooks have disappeared. The big advantage of looking at the ones that the Watford Observer has in their offices is they still have the logbooks. So if you know what you are looking for, you can go to the logbooks. Every single negative, whether it was used or not in the paper, has a number and is in its own separate envelope. So when I was working on the Vicarage Road at 100 book, 100 Years at Vicarage Road, I knew I wanted some pictures of the cup tie against Manchester United that was played in February 1969. So you can go to the book and look up what negative numbers pertain to the following Friday's Watford Observer, and there you will have several match shots and various other shots from that particular day. So if you know what you're looking for, you can get to it quickly and easily. If you don't, it's needle in a haystack stuff, because there are thousands and thousands of them.
That work seems to be, you say they're all as, you know, what I imagine when I was, you know, younger. They're not around as much now, but, you know, negatives from photography. Will they last? Is anything being done to sort of try and digitalise them or to preserve them?
Not as far as I know. That's really a question for people at the Watford Observer. From about 1995, they were shooting on digital. Maybe not quite as early as that, but from the time when they were shooting on digital, they're all preserved digitally by definition. So it's that period prior to that, which are where the negatives are at risk. as you will. But I think the challenge there is that there are so many of them, and it would take so much time and money to do that you've got a calculation to make about who's willing to invest in that to make it happen.
Yeah, that is true. And you guys have invested in it. You've invested your time in it, and it's fantastic that you really have. So, Colin, you find, once you found them, once you spent the time looking up at the light and finding them, how hard was it for you to pick the photographs?
Oh, you've got a lot, John, that are very similar, but by the very nature of them, with the photographer sitting by the goal in the same place week in, week out, you've got a very lot of similar shots. There's like literally hundreds, I would say, of shots of players attacking the goal at the Vicarage Road end with the old supporters club in the background and the main stand. And they're very similar. What we tried to do is go for the quirky shots. Like Geoff said, a lot of the detail is in the background of these photos. So we're looking for things like with the ground, sort of how it looks. There's ones that we've got of players' parties. We've got ones of the players celebrating in the dressing room. And there's a great shot where you've got Bobby Bell, an old sort of, he was a bit of a legend at Watford, but he's drinking lemonade out of a bucket. You can see him pouring our White's lemonade into a bucket, celebrating. And then you realise what they're actually celebrating. They beat Crystal Palace in the second round of the FA Cup when Crystal Palace were then a 4th division team and we were 3rd. So it shows sort of, I don't know, the different scale between now what's worthy of celebrating and then, but also the importance of the FA Cup. And so we're looking for sort of the quirky stuff, and I think we've got a lot of that in the book. We've got photos that perhaps weren't used because they're not just action shots. There's so much more to them than that, and it really shows what life was like for these players who were just normal blokes. They weren't superstars. They weren't high earners. That they were people that in the summer, chances are, they had to work at the brewery or the print works to supplement the money.
It's mainly 1950s and 60s. If I was a Watford fan back then, what would my life have been like? Would it be any better the last few years?
Well, the 1950s weren't really a great era for the club. In fact, the first promotion they achieved was in 1960. So for people who'd been following really in the 40 years leading up to that when they'd been in the league, there hadn't been much to cheer. It only got exciting when they got a big FA Cup tie. Big problem with the structure of the league was that only one team got promoted from the 3rd Division South every season. So, 1 in 24. And it was never Watford. It was only when the league got reorganised in the late 50s that things opened up a bit. They made this big investment in this player called Cliff Hulton, who is remembered by a lot of fans from the era. They got this promotion in 1959-60. And then during the 60s, things were really quite a lot better. It became almost fashionable, I think, as a club. They continued to do quite well by and large. Flirted with promotion to the 2nd Division on 2 or 3 occasions, and then finally got there in 1969. Which was almost 50 years after joining the league. So 60s was a pretty good decade. The 50s, not so much.
My looking through the book, I really enjoyed sort of, I think it doesn't come from reading the Treasury, it comes from listening to Hornet Heaven, like those individuals, those people, and Big Cliff Houghton, as you say, does come up quite a lot. He's in the latest series of Hornet Heaven a couple of times. And my son actually has become a little bit, not obsessed with him, but as I found, he's 9, but there's on Spotify, there's a list of songs called Watford Songs, and there's one there all about Big Cliff Houghton, and he hadn't seen him before. So actually finding, opening the book for him and showing him photos, he was just mesmerised by it and the sort of the players that were around him. Are there, for you, Geoff, are there individuals who you can see in there, or individual photos that anyone who does pick up the book, and everyone should, of course, that they should look out for?
It's really quite hard to pick out individual ones. You've asked the question. I'm flicking through it here, seeing if I have any particular favourites, and I'm not sure I do particularly. There's just lots of fascinating little detail.
Do you think there's a certain type of photo then that you like so much?
For me, it's the ones with all the detail in the background. So there's a lovely one of the players putting their boots on before a match. It comes from 1955, and the detail of what's in the dressing room, all their shirts hanging on the pegs. And there's a copy of that week's issue of Soccer Star magazine hanging on a bulldog clip from a pin on the door frame. So obviously provided to the players for them to read. There's others with the trees in the background. There's a glorious panoramic view of the pitch taken from the Vicarage Road end, where during the period where the Rookery didn't have any structure on it at all. So, this makes it look like a non-league ground. Actually, not even up to the standard of the non-league ground. And that's a wonderful picture. You think this is Vicarage Road, and for some people, this is within living memory. It was 1958. And it's like a field. So the detail of it's the detail, really, as Colin says, the background. There's a lovely team shot, and the spectators are all holding their hands up to their eyes because of the sun. Now, we still have to do that now. So if you're on the east side of the ground in the Elton John stand. So despite all of this, and despite all of the way that the ground and the club has changed, there are these little resonances that play right through to the present day.
Colin, is there any photos in particular for you, or, again, those certain styles that you favoured the most?
Yeah, there's some, I think, for a couple of reasons. There's one, it's right near the beginning of the book. It's from 1951. It's a group of about half a dozen schoolboys shouting in the dog traps at a game where it's pouring down with rain, and it's just so of the time. You see the clothes these lads are wearing and the looks on their faces. And
I've seen that one. They look very smartly
yeah,
dressed, don't they, for going to a football match?
They do. They're very dapper. And there's another one of a boxing match, and I think the reason I like it so much, it took hours because there's like hundreds of people in the picture and all a panoramic view of Watford in the background. And it's as I was doing it, I was having to zoom so closely into this image. And the images are such good quality because they've come straight from these glass plates that you can zoom right in and nothing sort of blurs or pixelates. And it was just, there was so much I could see when doing it. It was fantastic to do. And I felt I learnt a bit about Watford just doing it. And the ground, it shows the ground. And to the right of the main stand is the parade ring for the greyhounds. And now that sounds quite grand. It's not. It's just these sort of grotty old huts with a wooden fence around them. And just the crowd, and you can see in the background all of Watford just in the dusk almost. It's a fantastic shot. And another thing is, we acknowledge what we found these photos and colorised them. It's the men who took them. The big shame is there's no one we can attribute each individual shot to. We know the Observer had a couple of photographers at the time, mostly Mike Della and a guy called Ralph Jones, and they took these photos, but we can't attribute which one's which, and it's such a shame because these are the guys that should be getting so much credit, although they're long gone. And I know I contacted Oliver Phillips when he was about, and he was really helpful in trying to help who took what photo, but we just couldn't. He could tell me who the photographers were, but no idea whose name to put on them, which is a shame.
But it's nice that their work continues and lives on and gets looked at again. Not in a box in the corner of an office or anything. They're getting some life, and hopefully we'll see some more if you ever have spare time, lads. If we want to get a copy of it, Colin, where's the best place to get a copy?
The best place, if you go into the game, is the Hornet shop. They've got plenty in. They've ordered some more because they're pretty close to selling out the initial batch. Excellent. Which was great news. So that's the place if you go into the game. If not, you can get them online from quite a simple address, the watfordtreasury.com. And if you go there, once you're on our website, just look under the little section, Golden Shots and Visions of Blue, and you can order it there for £15 plus postage, and we'd be happy to post one to you. A big thanks to the museum for allowing us to sort of use these glass plates and access them and giving us so much time. And a massive thanks as well to the Watford Observer, who since the Treasury have started have been nothing but helpful, mostly in the guise of Anthony Matthews, who's nothing's ever too much trouble. But it was a case of when we first started, there was a little bit of a mix-up over copyright where we had to sort of contact them and apologise for not crediting the pictures and sort of, please don't sue us. And instead of sort of being a bit uppity with us and a bit precious, they invited us in and just said, look, use whatever photos you like. We're happy to help. And ever since then, it's been an open door down there. So I just can't thank the Watford Observer enough for everything they've done, not just for this book, but for the whole Watford Treasury project.
Colin's said what we all know at the Treasury, that the support of the museum and especially the Watford Observer is something without which we wouldn't have been in a position to do what we've been doing, and are very happy to continue to be doing.
We're the ORNS, you're the ORNS. Come on, you ORNS!
Thank you so much to Geoff and Colin Payne for their time there, talking about their fantastic book. Do get yourself a copy. It's a hardback called Golden Shots and Visions of Baloo. The perfect present for a lover of Watford. And of course, thank you so much to Colin, the Brigadier Mace, for his time and sharing the thoughts of what has been a good week for Watford. And may there be many, many more between now and the end of the season. At least maybe until Christmas. We've got a couple of toughies, though. We've got a couple of toughies next week. 2 visits to Vicarage Road. Firstly, team who came down, Southampton, who are doing all right. And a team who are doing very, very all right in Ipswich, who came up last year. So Saturday and Tuesday night, under the lights at Vicarage Road. And we'll be covering both those next week. Come on, you ORNS!